Welcome back to Next Gen Investing. It's now time to talk one of the biggest heavyweights in this market, and that is Nvidia today for FOMO. And it's always good to check in on the latest with Nvidia, as we tend to get headlines very frequently. Joining us now to talk more about some of the news that's impacting a nice 1.3% rise today is Diane King Hall, host of Morning Movers. So Diane, walk us through some of the latest, as of course this name is so critical to the overall market. It's no surprise to now see us firming up also in the four major averages.
Yeah, look, it looks like investors are in a buying mood ahead of results that we'll get from Nvidia in less than a week. And keep in mind, next week is a holiday shortened trading week, so there's only essentially a few more trading days before we get those all-important results from Nvidia on May 28th. And analysts are starting to put out some of their views and adjusting some of their views ahead of those earnings. So the when is May 28th. The what is how will they do, especially when you think about those H20 chips and the export controls that were placed on those. Those are the chips that were originally their stronghold in China, and they're now facing export bans there. In terms of what the expectation is going into results, and I'll talk a little bit about some of Jensen Huang's recent comments firing back about those export controls. So the expectation is for earnings to rise more than 40%, and revenue is expected to climb more than 60%. So there are some big hurdles to climb here. At the same time, and analysts are not expecting necessarily a big move in terms of the stock reaction, because in recent quarters, even when they beat and raise, you don't see a big move in recent quarters. So that's not the expectation going into this. TD Cowen says their view on Nvidia is they're still a top compute pick, but they talked about the fact that the earnings calls haven't been positive catalysts recently. Now, in terms of the H20 chips, the CEO Jensen Huang slamming the export controls, saying they've backfired in terms of the China AI development there. He calls the restrictions there a failure. He talked about the U.S. losing market share there and what he sees as a $50 billion AI market next year. And keep in mind, in terms of NVIDIA's footprint there, they had made up more than 90% there. And now with the export control, that's been significantly reduced there, guys.
Diane, I love that you brought up the kind of lackluster performance around earnings. Not only has the day after the earnings event not been as exciting for Nvidia investors, I think it's 2 up, 1 unchanged, or 2 down, 1 unchanged, and then 1 up over the last 4 quarters. But I extended that window a little bit. I just wanted to look the next week after earnings. We know that this is like an event for the market. It takes a little bit to digest. Down 10.6%. Down 7%, down 14.6%, the last 3 times 1 week after each one of its events. So a streak Nvidia investors are hoping to break with this most recent one. You have the opportunity to talk to a lot of analysts and portfolio managers and traders there at the exchange on Wall Street. Is there still a sense that for this market to continue its ascent towards all-time high, is that a name like an Nvidia and the AI trade has to be the reason why?
So I'm not hearing that it has to be the reason why, but you can't discount it, obviously. So in terms of some of the expectations from analysts, Oppenheimer, Wedbush both see Nvidia as outperform. They certainly still see upside from here. Both of those analysts and their analyst teams at both of those companies still see more than 30% upside from here. They are expecting to see strong results from the most recent quarter, and they're expecting stability with the next quarter. They still think they're the best position within this space. For Wedbush, their view is that they think Nvidia can lift sales enough to offset the loss of the H20 and the China business. And they said they're comfortable with where they see their consensus estimate for revenue for $43 billion. So Oppenheimer saying that they expect both upside results and a roughly inline quarter for the July quarter, despite, again, the loss of the H20 sales. So even though they have lost those sales, they do think that Nvidia is going to make up for it. But at the same time, it's interesting to see Jensen Huang pointing out that he thinks the export controls are causing more harm than good.
Yeah, and I think that that's a great point there. And I think some of these analyst notes, and you see this like reaffirmation of the belief that AI will still have the same power it had in the back of this year, I think is huge. So NVIDIA with a decent move today, a relatively more quiet week, but definitely move to the upside nonetheless. So at least as we've seen at this noon hour, things tend to shift. We're still holding on to 1% gain in NVIDIA. Appreciate it though, Diane King Hall, of course, the host of Morning Movers.